Hey investor friends, I'm Michelle Markey and it's mid-February 2022, which means that fund managers and companies with assets under management of at least $100 million had to disclose by now what their American listed equity positions were in accordance with the SEC's 13F filing rules, which means at 45 days after the end of the quarter, they need to publicly disclose what they were invested in. So now we know what some super investors were invested in as of December 31, 2021, potentially at peak bull market times. So this is a window as to seeing how much investing activity they were willing to do, or if there was basically no investing activity on behalf of some of these investors. And the ones that I'll cover today include some of my favorites: Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Mohnish Pabrai, Spier, Greg Alexander, as well as Lu, Bill Miller, and Michael Burry. And I'll just touch on some of what these super investors invested in. And it's not a full comprehensive view into what they've invested in, because they may have also made some international investments like Mohnish Pabrai and Spier did, which we're not going to see on 13F filings. But this gives us a little bit of a clue as to what their investment trends might look like. And so we can continue to study and try to see if some of the companies that they invested in might be things that could potentially become part of our circle of competence someday. And if you also enjoy studying some of the best investors, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to my video and YouTube channel, because I try my hardest to study all these investors, and each of your likes and subscribes goes a very long way with the YouTube algorithm, and I greatly appreciate it. So let's get into it. Thanks. First off, with my homie, his Q4 2021 portfolio went up by about $38 billion in market value, from $293 billion in Q3 to about $331 billion in Q4, and his positions increased from 43 to 44, and he had a net new 3 positions, which I'll discuss briefly. And the biggest observations I had about his top 10 holdings was that he added about $1 billion worth of Chevron, so he's probably collecting some of that sweet dividend money as energy prices are going up in 2022. So gas companies are currently doing well. And then the other observation I noticed was that his Apple position increased, not because he bought more Apple, but just probably because Apple's share price went up. So that means his position increased from about 43% of Apple to 48% of Apple in his Berkshire Hathaway equity positions. So most of what Buffett has seemingly been up to with adding or subtracting from the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio has been kind of minor. So maybe it's been more of the work of Ted and Todd rather than the master doing a lot of investing in Q4. But the net new holdings that he added seem to be in New Holdings, which is a banking and financial services firm that serves 48 million customers across Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia. So that's $1 billion there. And then another $1 billion into Activision Blizzard, which we all know Microsoft is trying to buy. And it's a bit of a beleaguered video gaming company right now. So maybe it's ripe for investing in, because maybe there will be brighter days ahead for Activision, as well as he seemed to put about $134 million into Liberty Media Corp Formula One, which runs the FIA Formula One World Championship. So that seems to be gaining in popularity. So across some of these net new positions, these potentially could give us ideas of what we could invest in, as well as how, if we look at some of his other investing trends, it seems like he's a little bit more bullish on some housing related companies, because he added to his positions in Floor Decor Holdings as well as Restoration Hardware. But then he's a little bit more bearish on other financial services companies and also pharma. And some of these we see that he reduced his positions in Mastercard and Visa, and then sold off a bunch of pharma companies. So across these holdings, overall, I think that Buffett is still biding his time and sitting on a predominant amount of cash. Like most likely it's still around $150 billion. So I think that Buffett is waiting for a big buying opportunity in the markets before he deploys a lot of cash. And I love Charlie Munger because he's like everyone's favorite curmudgeonly grandpa who tells it like it is, and much like a honey badger, doesn't care what you think, and he's just going to do what he wants to do. And he doesn't need 45 days to release the Daily Journal Corporation's 13F filing, which came out only a few days after the end of the fourth quarter. So we already know that, much like I talked about in my video when this first came about, is that he doubled down on Alibaba by adding 300,000 shares, and also, as he discussed in the Daily Journal Corporation's annual meeting on February 16, he took out about $40 million of margin debt to be able to buy more Alibaba because he thinks it's one of the better investment opportunities right now given current market conditions. So he is totally all in on Alibaba, and I think that that's super admirable that he has so much conviction at 98 years young, and he has a lot of admiration for how the Chinese economy is run, and he also loves Lee Kuan Yew, who he thinks turned Singapore around into a really great country with great economic fundamentals. So there's a lot we can learn about how Charlie Munger invests, and we can see that Alibaba is the third topmost position in the Daily Journal Corporation's portfolio. And then even more bullish than Charlie is Greg Alexander, which Warren Buffett also tremendously admires. And on behalf of Conifer Management, Greg Alexander added 20% to Conifer's position of Alibaba, and now he has about $250 million worth of Alibaba as the fourth topmost position in Conifer Management. So very interesting how both of these guys are super bullish on Alibaba's future. And unlike Charlie Munger and Greg Alexander, Mohnish Pabrai of Pabrai Funds / Dalal Street turned super bearish on Alibaba because he completely sold out of it in favor of buying businesses that he considers to be superior to Alibaba, and that would be Prosus, which we won't find on his 13F filing, but maybe it will be eventually on a shareholder report that sites like Ticker might come across eventually. But we know that he bought Prosus because it has a substantial stake in Tencent, which he also considers superior to Alibaba, and you can learn more in my video about what I was able to uncover about Prosus so far, and there's way more to research if you're interested in either Prosus and or Tencent to understand why Mohnish is so bullish on those companies. And in addition, he seemed to have added to his positions that are existing already in Micron Technology and also Rain Industries, but he significantly reduced his position in Seritage Growth Properties. So that seems to be basically, in a nutshell, what Mohnish Pabrai has been up to in Q4. And I only wish that we could really know how much he invested in Prosus, because I know that Mohnish Pabrai likes to be heavily concentrated. So eventually we might be lucky to find out how much he invested in that company. So that'll be something to keep tracking and see how that performs over time. And then with Guy Spier of Aquamarine Capital, he seemed to just stay fully invested throughout Q4 2021, and he neither added nor sold any position. So for him, he's just kind of maybe seeing where things are, and this could be possibly because we could be at peak market conditions, so maybe stocks can only go on sale from here on out. So it doesn't surprise me that Guy Spier is just kind of keeping things the way they are and likely studying more technology companies and venture capital backed companies in order to figure out better future investments in the Oasis of tech, like I also talked about in my video where I reviewed what he said with the Kolkata Investors Group. So also very fascinating to study what Guy Spier is seeing in the markets right now. And then in addition, we can see with Li Lu of Himalaya Capital that the only two positions he added to was in his positions in Bank of America as well as Facebook, aka Meta. And both of these investors, Li Lu and Guy Spier, didn't add to their existing Micron technology investments, unlike Mohnish Pabrai, who seemed to be the only one who added to it, and a few other super investors reduced their positions in Micron. So very interesting to keep studying what these investors might be looking into. And the only other note I had that I'm wondering about is why Li Lu may not be as interested in investing in Alibaba, or maybe he's invested in Alibaba in another kind of fund. I don't know, but if you know more about if Li Lu is invested in Alibaba or not, that would be interesting to know, because I know that Charlie Munger also tremendously admires Li Lu. And I can't help but believe that maybe Lu exposed Charlie Munger to Alibaba. So I'm just kind of wondering if Lu has any thoughts about Alibaba or not. And feel free to let me know in the comments if you've come across anything with Lu and Alibaba. And then with Bill Miller of Miller Value Partners, he seems super diversified, maybe one of the most diversified value investors I've seen across this group. So it kind of reminds me of Ben Graham style a little bit, or maybe he's picking up a bunch of cigar butts, who knows? But either way, I see that he's a little bit bullish like Charlie Munger in adding to a BABA position because that's his 15th top position, and he's got about $80 million in BABA right now. And then he's kind of bullish on Facebook like Lu is, in also adding to his Meta position. And in addition, I noticed he's a little bit bearish on Google, so it's interesting. So I'm kind of wondering, given with Meta's drop recently, if he and Lu are going to be adding even more during Q1 2022 to their Meta positions, because it has to be more on sale. If they were willing to buy it at the prices in Q4, then they should be likely to buy more Meta in Q1, because why wouldn't you if you believe in that company? So also something to study and keep track of and see where things go for those investors. And then finally, Michael Burry of Scion Asset Management, known for the Big Short during the Great Financial Crisis, and who also made out like a bandit with the bursting of the housing bubble. And he's also the guy who's saying that the mother of all crashes is coming. He seemed to make a bunch of moves during Q4 where he bought a bunch of companies that I'm not super familiar with, but you've probably heard of, like Bristol Myers Squibb and General Dynamics, as well as Fidelity National Financial, which is not to be confused with the brokerage firm Fidelity Investments. And those are some of the companies that you can study if you're interested in some of them, because he seemed to trade and sell out of Lockheed Martin, one aerospace and defense company, for another in buying General Dynamics. And he also completely sold out of CVS Health. So definitely interesting to study and see. Maybe actually some of his short moves might be more interesting than maybe some of his long moves, because I know a lot of people like to track and see the latest of what Michael Burry might be up to, because he's known for making some brilliant moves. But right now, a lot of people are sort of doubting his bubble bursting predicting abilities. So let's see how Michael Burry fares and if he'll be right again this time around. So whether or not Q4 2021 comes to represent peak valuations in the 13-year bull market that's been in place since 2009, as we can see with the investing moves or lack thereof among these super investors, many of them still found ways to invest, even if it meant that not so many 1-foot bars were available to jump over, but maybe they had to hop over maybe 3 or 4-foot bars, certainly not 7-foot bars as Warren Buffett likes to avoid. And overall, we can see that even if valuations are tough to crack, that there can still be investing opportunities if we're willing to do our due diligence and thoroughly research investing opportunities before we make any moves. So if you enjoyed this video or learned something, please like and subscribe, and I wish you well on your journey to being the best investor you can be and studying and emulating some of these super investors, because they're some of the best at doing it. So I think they give a lot of great ideas and having some things that we can learn and see if we'd also like to invest in. Till next time.